Over the course of 25 years in 19th-century Pennsylvania, 5 different women married the wealthy industrialist Jeremiah Hartwell. Each bride was intelligent, healthy, and full of life when she entered his grand mansion on Beacon Hill. But one by one, every single wife suffered the exact same horrifying fate. Complete mental breakdown within months of living in the master bedroom suite. The pattern was so consistent, so methodical, that when the truth finally emerged in 1835, it shocked not just Millbrook County, but the entire state of Pennsylvania. What authorities discovered wasn't coincidence or family curse, but something far more sinister, a deliberate conspiracy that had been destroying women's minds for decades. Tonight, we uncover the terrifying truth about what really happened in that mansion and how one man systematically drove 5 wives to madness, using methods so calculated that even today they chilled the blood. Before we continue with the story of Jeremiah Hartwell and his tragic wives, make sure to subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments what state you're listening from. You might be surprised how close these dark events happened to your own home. The events that shocked Pennsylvania began in the prosperous town of Millbrook, nestled in the coal-rich valleys southwest of Pittsburgh. By 1820, the Industrial Revolution had transformed this once quiet farming community into a bustling center of commerce, with smoke-belching factories lining the Monongah River and newly wealthy families building grand mansions on the surrounding hills. Jeremiah Hartwell arrived in Millbrook in 1821, an ambitious young man of 25 with a keen eye for opportunity. Unlike many industrialists of his era who inherited their wealth, Hartwell had clawed his way up from modest beginnings in rural Ohio. His father had been a blacksmith, and Jeremiah had learned early that success required both intelligence and ruthless determination. Within 5 years of his arrival, he had established the Hartwell Iron Works, specializing in the production of railroad components that were desperately needed as America expanded westward. The Hartwell Mansion, completed in 1828, stood as a testament to his rapid rise. Perched on Beacon Hill overlooking the town, the 3-story Georgian structure boasted 42 rooms, imported marble fixtures, and manicured gardens that stretched for acres. The townspeople marveled at its grandeur, particularly the master bedroom suite that occupied the entire east wing of the 2nd floor. Hartwell had spared no expense in its decoration, with hand-painted wallpaper from France, a massive 4-bed carved from Pennsylvania cherry wood, and tall windows that offered panoramic views of the valley below. What made Hartwell's success even more remarkable was his personal magnetism. Standing over 6 feet tall with piercing blue eyes and prematurely silver hair, he possessed the kind of commanding presence that made both business rivals and social peers take notice. Local society matrons competed to invite him to their gatherings, and unmarried daughters of prominent families found themselves inexplicably drawn to his sophisticated charm and obvious wealth. Hartwell seemed to understand exactly how to make each person feel as though they were the most important individual in the room. This combination of wealth, charm, and social position made Jeremiah Hartwell the most eligible bachelor in western Pennsylvania. When he announced his engagement to Margaret Dunlap, the 19-year-old daughter of a respected judge, the entire community celebrated what appeared to be a perfect match. The wedding, held in October 1829, was described by the Millbrook Gazette as the social event of the decade, with over 300 guests attending the elaborate ceremony at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church. Margaret Hartwell's transformation began slowly, almost imperceptibly, in the spring following her wedding. At first, the changes seemed like the natural adjustments of a young bride adapting to married life. She had always been known for her quick wit and engaging conversation at social gatherings, but now she appeared distracted during visits, often staring out windows with a peculiar intensity that made her guests uncomfortable. Her sister, Catherine Dunlap, later recalled in a private letter that Margaret had begun speaking about the house as though it were watching her. She would stop mid-conversation and turn toward empty doorways, Catherine wrote, as if someone had called her name. When I asked what she heard, she would smile in that strange way and say, "Just the house settling, dear sister." Old houses have their own language. By summer, Margaret's behavior had become noticeably erratic. She began refusing to sleep in any room other than the master bedroom, claiming that the house felt wrong when she wasn't in her proper place. The household staff, initially charmed by their mistress's gentle nature, grew increasingly uneasy. As Margaret developed what they privately called the watching habit, she would position herself at the bedroom windows for hours, not looking out at the gardens or the town below, but staring intently at her own reflection in the glass, moving her head slightly from side to side as if studying herself from different angles. The breaking point came on a humid evening in August 1830. The Hartwells were hosting a dinner party for several prominent Pittsburgh businessmen when Margaret suddenly stood up in the middle of the main course, walked to the dining room's large mirror, and began having an animated conversation with her reflection. The guests watched in stunned silence as she gestured emphatically and appeared to be arguing with the image in the glass, occasionally laughing in a high-pitched manner that no one had ever heard from her before. She kept asking her why she looked so tired, recalled Thomas Petton, one of the dinner guests, in his journal. But the most unsettling part was that she seemed to be waiting for answers, pausing as if the reflection was speaking back to her. When Mr. Hartwell gently tried to guide her away from the mirror, she became agitated and insisted that she wasn't finished talking yet. That night, according to the testimony of Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper, Margaret was found at 3 o'clock in the morning standing in the master bedroom, completely naked, methodically tearing down the French wallpaper strip by strip. When Sarah entered the room, Margaret turned with a serene smile and explained that she needs to see what's underneath. The walls, when fully exposed, revealed nothing but standard plaster and wooden lath, but Margaret nodded with satisfaction as if she had uncovered some crucial secret. Dr. Harrison Henley, the family physician, was summoned the following morning. His examination revealed a physically healthy 20-year-old woman who appeared to be suffering from what he termed severe nervous exhaustion complicated by obsessive melancholia in his notes, which would later become crucial evidence. Dr. Henley wrote, Mrs. Hartwell demonstrates an unusual fixation with mirrors and reflective surfaces, coupled with an insistence that her reflection is somehow separate from herself. Most disturbing is her absolute certainty that this other self provides her with information about the house and its history. Within 2 weeks, Margaret's condition had deteriorated to the point where she required constant supervision. She had become convinced that mirrors throughout the house contained messages that only she could interpret, and she spent her days moving from reflection to reflection, carrying on detailed conversations with what she called the other. When family members tried to cover the mirrors, she became violently agitated, scratching at the cloth coverings until her fingernails bled. The final incident occurred on September 15, 1830. Margaret somehow managed to gather every mirror, piece of polished silver, and reflective surface in the mansion into the master bedroom. She arranged them in a complex pattern around the room, then spent the entire night in what the housekeeper described as a conference with her other selves. By morning, she had lost the ability to recognize anyone, including her husband, and spoke only to the reflections, which she insisted were her real family. Dr. Henley, after consulting with colleagues in Philadelphia, made the difficult recommendation that Margaret be committed to the Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane. On a gray October morning, as autumn leaves swirled around the Hartwell mansion, Margaret was led away in a closed carriage, still calling over her shoulder to tell the others, "I'll be back soon." She would spend the remaining 43 years of her life in that institution, never recovering her sanity and never ceasing to search for mirrors in her restricted room. The commitment of Margaret Hartwell sent shockwaves through Millbrook's social elite, but the community's response revealed the complex attitudes toward mental illness that characterized the 1830s. While some whispered about hereditary madness or moral failings, most of the town's prominent families rallied around Jeremiah, viewing him as a tragic figure whose promising marriage had been destroyed by forces beyond his control. The prevailing medical wisdom of the era attributed female mental illness to a variety of causes, ranging from excessive reading to disruption of natural feminine roles. Dr. Henley's official report, submitted to the county authorities, cited Margaret's condition as likely resulting from overstimulation of the nervous system, due to the sudden elevation in social position and domestic responsibilities. This explanation satisfied most observers, as it aligned with common beliefs about the delicate nature of the female constitution. For 3 years following Margaret's commitment, Jeremiah Hartwell lived as a reclusive widower, maintaining his business interests, but avoiding social gatherings. The master bedroom was sealed, its contents covered with white sheets, and Jeremiah moved to a smaller room on the 3rd floor. The household staff, reduced to just the essential positions, reported that their employer spent most evenings in his study, poring over medical texts and correspondence with various physicians about his wife's condition. During this period, Hartwell became obsessed with understanding what he called the science of mental affliction. He accumulated an extensive library on topics ranging from phrenology to the latest European theories about nervous disorders. His personal journals, discovered decades later, reveal a man genuinely tormented by his wife's fate and desperately seeking rational explanations for her breakdown. In 1833, Jeremiah received word that Margaret had died in the asylum, her final years marked by progressive physical deterioration that accompanied her mental decline. The funeral was a small private affair attended only by immediate family members. Margaret was buried in the Hartwell family plot in Millbrook Cemetery, her gravestone bearing only her name, dates, and the inscription "Beloved Wife at Peace." The tragedy seemed to mark the end of one chapter in Jeremiah's life, but those closest to him noticed that Margaret's death had changed him in subtle but profound ways. His business associates remarked that he had developed an almost obsessive attention to detail in his personal appearance and he began requiring that all mirrors in his office be cleaned twice daily, and he had developed a habit of checking his reflection frequently throughout business meetings, as if verifying that he appeared normal to others. More significantly, Hartwell had begun speaking about marriage again, but in terms that struck many as coldly analytical rather than romantic. He would discuss the requirements of a suitable wife with the same methodical approach he applied to business negotiations, creating what he called compatibility assessments for potential candidates. It was during this period that Hartwell met Elena Rodriguez, the 22-year-old daughter of a Spanish merchant, who had recently established trading connections with Pittsburgh's growing industrial sector. Elena possessed a rare combination of intelligence and beauty that immediately captured Hartwell's attention. But more importantly, she demonstrated what he described as exceptional mental resilience during their courtship conversations. Their engagement, announced in the spring of 1834, surprised many in Millbrook society who had assumed Hartwell would never remarry. But those who observed the couple together noted that Jeremiah seemed to have recovered his earlier charm and confidence. Elena, for her part, appeared genuinely happy and excited about becoming mistress of the grand mansion on Beacon Hill. The wedding took place in June 1834, a more modest affair than Hartwell's first marriage, but still elegant enough to satisfy social expectations. As Elena moved into the mansion, Hartwell made a decision that would later seem significant. He reopened the master bedroom suite, having it completely redecorated with new wallpaper, furnishings, and most notably, an entirely new collection of mirrors. Elena embraced her role as mistress of the Hartwell household with enthusiasm and grace. She was particularly proud of the master bedroom, often giving tours to visiting ladies and pointing out the beautiful mirrors that reflected light. Throughout the spacious suite, she seemed to take special pleasure in the large vanity mirror, where she would sit each morning and evening, brushing her long dark hair while chatting happily with her personal maid about the day's activities. For the first 6 months of their marriage, Elena appeared to be thriving in her new life. She quickly became popular among the local social set, known for her warmth, intelligence, and genuine interest in others. Unlike Margaret, who had been somewhat shy and reserved, Elena possessed a natural confidence that made her an ideal hostess for Jeremiah's business entertaining. But by the winter of 1834, those closest to Elena began to notice subtle changes in her demeanor and habits. The first signs of Elena's deterioration appeared in February 1835, manifesting in ways that were eerily reminiscent of Margaret's early symptoms. Though the household staff had been strictly instructed never to discuss the previous Mrs. Hartwell's illness with the new bride, Elena's personal maid, Maria Santos, a young woman who had accompanied Elena from her father's household, kept detailed notes in her private diary about her mistress's changing behavior. These notes, discovered years later hidden in the mansion's attic, provide the most complete record of Elena's gradual transformation. Signora Elena has begun spending much longer at her vanity, Maria wrote in early February. This morning she sat brushing her hair for nearly 2 hours, but she was not looking at herself. She was staring just to the left of her reflection as if watching someone else in the mirror. When I asked if she needed anything, she said she was trying to tell me something important. Maria, I must listen carefully. By March, Elena had developed what she called mirror conversations, though she insisted they were different from simply talking to herself. According to Maria's accounts, Elena would position herself before various mirrors throughout the house and engage in what appeared to be dialogues, pausing to listen and responding to unheard questions or comments. Unlike Margaret's agitated interactions with her reflection, Elena's conversations seemed pleasant and informative. She tells me things about the house that I never knew, Elena confided to Maria one afternoon. About the previous family who lived here, about the secrets hidden in the walls. She's very knowledgeable about household management, too. She's given me excellent advice about organizing the staff schedules. Dr. Henley, still serving as the family physician, was discreetly consulted when Elena's behavior became more pronounced. His private notes from this period reveal his growing concern about what he termed a most troubling parallel to the previous Mrs. Hartwell's condition. However, Elena's symptoms differed in significant ways that made diagnosis difficult. While Margaret had become increasingly agitated and incoherent, Elena remained articulate, rational, and functional in all areas except her relationship with mirrors. The turning point came in April 1835 when Elena announced to the household staff that she had learned something very important from her conversations with what she now called the mirror woman. She had discovered, she claimed, that the previous Mrs. Hartwell was still present in the house, trapped within the reflective surfaces and trying to warn future wives about the truth behind the walls. Elena has become convinced that the mirrors contained some form of spiritual presence. Dr. Henley wrote to a colleague in Philadelphia, however, unlike cases of religious mania or supernatural delusions I have encountered, she maintains perfect rationality in all other matters. She continues to manage the household efficiently, maintains normal social relationships, and shows no signs of the physical deterioration typically associated with mental illness. The obsession appears to be completely focused on reflective surfaces and what she believes they reveal about the house's history. Jeremiah's reaction to his second wife's developing condition was markedly different from his response to Margaret's illness. Rather than seeking immediate medical intervention, he began what he called careful observation and documentation of Elena's behavior. His journals from this period show a man trying to understand the apparent pattern emerging in his household. Elena's condition progresses along remarkably similar lines to Margaret's, he wrote, yet with enough variation to suggest that the underlying cause may be environmental rather than constitutional. Both women were perfectly healthy before residing in the master bedroom suite. Both developed fixations with mirrors within months of taking up residence. Both claimed to receive information from their reflections that they could not have known previously. This analytical approach led Hartwell to conduct what he called controlled experiments with Elena's condition. He began documenting exactly which mirrors triggered the strongest responses, at what times of day the conversations were most intense, and what specific information Elena claimed to receive from the reflections. His notes reveal an attempt to understand whether external factors might be contributing to his wife's mental deterioration. The experiments yielded disturbing results. Elena's most intense episodes occurred in the master bedroom between sunset and midnight, always involving the same large vanity mirror that had been Margaret's primary focus. The conversations followed consistent patterns, with Elena asking questions about the house's history and receiving what she described as detailed answers about previous residents, hidden rooms, and secrets that must be preserved. Most unsettling was Elena's claim that the reflection had shown her the truth about what happened to the first wife. According to Elena, Margaret had not gone insane at all, but had discovered something so shocking about the house or its owner that she had been deliberately made to appear mentally ill to discredit her potential revelations. The mirror woman says Margaret knew too much. Elena told Maria in May 1835. She says that's why Margaret had to be sent away to protect the important secret. But she also says Margaret is still trying to warn people through the mirrors because the truth must eventually come out. By summer, Elena's behavior had become impossible to hide from Millbrook society. She had begun refusing to attend social gatherings unless the host's home contained mirrors where she could check with her advisor about appropriate conversation topics. When forced to attend mirror-free events, she became anxious and distracted, often excusing herself early to return home to her consultations. The situation reached a crisis point in August 1835, when Elena announced to Jeremiah that she had learned something that would change everything about their marriage and his position in the community. Elena's revelation came on a stifling August evening when the summer heat seemed to press against the mansion's windows like a living thing. Jeremiah found his wife in the master bedroom, seated before the vanity mirror, but this time she was not engaging in her usual animated conversations. Instead, she sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, staring at her reflection with an expression of profound sadness. "She has shown me the truth about this house," Elena said without turning away from the mirror. "About what you do to women who live in this room, Jeremiah. About why Margaret really went insane." According to Jeremiah's journal entry from that evening, Elena then revealed a series of allegations that left him stunned. She claimed the mirror woman had shown her hidden passages within the walls, secret rooms where previous occupants had been kept against their will, and evidence of what she termed medical experiments conducted on unwilling subjects. Elena has constructed an elaborate fantasy involving secret chambers and clandestine activities, Jeremiah wrote. She insists that Margaret discovered evidence of these alleged crimes and that her mental breakdown was artificially induced to silence her. Most disturbing is her claim that the mirrors somehow contain memories of these events accessible only to women who spend enough time in the master bedroom. But Elena's accusations went beyond vague conspiracy theories. She provided specific details about the mansion's construction, claiming the mirror woman had revealed the existence of hidden passages that connected the master bedroom to unused sections of the house. She described elaborate monitoring systems built into the walls. And most shocking of all, she alleged that Jeremiah had been systematically drugging his wives with substances designed to cause hallucinations and mental confusion. "The medicine you give me for my headaches," Elena confronted her husband that night. "It's not medicine at all, is it? She showed me what it really does, how it makes women see things that aren't there, how it makes them appear insane to outside observers." Jeremiah's response to these accusations was swift and decisive. The next morning, he consulted with Dr. Henley about Elena's rapidly deteriorating mental condition, emphasizing the paranoid delusions and conspiracy theories that had replaced her earlier benign conversations with mirrors. Dr. Henley, already concerned about the parallels to Margaret's case, agreed that Elena posed a potential danger to herself and others. "Mrs. Hartwell has developed a systematic delusional structure that mirrors the earlier case in disturbing ways," Dr. Henley noted. "Her insistence on hidden passages and secret activities suggests a complete break from reality, possibly exacerbated by the isolation and stress of managing a large household. I fear that without immediate intervention, she may progress to the violent episodes that characterized the final stages of the first Mrs. Hartwell's illness." But Elena was not ready to be quietly committed to an asylum. Over the next several days, she began what she called her investigation, systematically examining the mansion's walls for the hidden passages the mirror woman had described. She recruited Maria and several other household staff members, convincing them to help search for loose panels, hollow spaces, and concealed doorways. That the search yielded unexpected results. Behind a wardrobe in the master bedroom, Maria discovered a section of wall that sounded hollow when tapped. Further examination revealed a narrow panel that, when pressed, swung inward to reveal a cramped passage running between the walls. The passage, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, appeared to connect several rooms on the second floor and contained what Lena described as observation ports, small holes that allowed someone in the passage to see into the bedrooms without being detected. The mirror woman was right, Alina told Maria triumphantly. The passages are real, just as she said they would be. If this part of her story is true, then everything else must be true as well. The discovery of the hidden passages sent shockwaves through the household staff, but their impact on Jeremiah was even more profound. His journal entries from this period show a man struggling to maintain control of a situation that was spiraling beyond his ability to manage through conventional means. Elena's delusions have led to the discovery of architectural features I was unaware existed in my own home, he wrote. The previous owner made no mention of these passages during the property transfer, and I can only assume they were constructed for purposes I cannot fathom. However, Elena's interpretation of their significance has become completely divorced from rational explanation. She now views every aspect of the house's design as evidence of a vast conspiracy directed against women, in general and wives in particular. As word of Elena's discoveries spread through Millbrook's gossip networks, Jeremiah found himself facing questions he could not adequately answer. Why hadn't he known about the passages? What was their original purpose? Most importantly, how could he explain the disturbing coincidence that both of his wives had developed nearly identical forms of mental illness focused on the same bedroom and the same mirrors? The pressure intensified when Elena's father, concerned about reports of his daughter's behavior, arrived from Pittsburgh for an unannounced visit. Don Carlos Rodriguez was a shrewd businessman who had not built his trading empire by accepting convenient explanations for inconvenient problems. His meeting with Elena revealed a woman who appeared perfectly rational except for her insistence on the mirror woman's revelations. And his subsequent conversation with Jeremiah raised questions that demanded immediate answers. My daughter claims she has discovered evidence of criminal activity in your household, Don Carlos informed Jeremiah during a tense evening meeting. She also alleges that her mental condition is being artificially induced through medications administered without her knowledge. These are serious accusations that cannot be dismissed simply because they originate from someone whose sanity is questioned. Just when we thought we'd seen it all, the horror in the Hartwell mansion intensifies. If this story is giving you chills, share this video with a friend who loves dark mysteries. Hit that like button to support our content. And don't forget to subscribe to never miss stories like this. Let's discover together what happens next as the truth behind 5 Wives. Madness finally begins to emerge. The confrontation between Don Carlos and Jeremiah Hartwell took place in the mansion's library, a room notably devoid of mirrors or reflective surfaces. Elena had insisted on being present, claiming she needed to consult with her advisor before making any important decisions about her future. When informed that no mirrors were available in the library, she became agitated and requested that a hand mirror be brought to the meeting. I cannot discuss important matters without her guidance, Elena insisted. She knows things about this house and its history that no one else understands. She has been trying to protect me just as she tried to protect Margaret. Don Carlos's reaction to his daughter's behavior was markedly different from the responses of previous observers. Rather than dismissing Elena's claims as delusional, he began asking specific questions about the information she claimed to receive from the mirror woman. His approach revealed details that had not emerged during Dr. Henley's medical examinations. Tell me exactly what this mirror woman has revealed about the house's previous occupants, Don Carlos requested. Elena's response provided information that should have been impossible for her to know: detailed descriptions of the mansion's original owner, specific architectural features that predated Jeremiah's ownership, and most disturbing of all, accurate information about financial transactions and business dealings that had occurred before her arrival in Millbrook. Jeremiah's attempts to explain these revelations as coincidence or lucky guesses were undermined by Elena's continued accuracy. She described business associates Jeremiah had never mentioned to her, detailed his private correspondence with investors, and most shocking of all, provided accurate accounts of conversations that had taken place in the library years earlier before she had ever set foot in the house. The mirror woman sees everything that happens in the house, Elena explained. She has been watching and listening for years, accumulating information about all the residents and visitors. She knows about the secret business arrangements, the hidden financial records, the real reason Jeremiah chose this particular house for his residence. As Elena continued her revelations, a pattern emerged that transformed the investigation from a medical case to a criminal inquiry. The information she provided suggested that the Hartwell mansion had been deliberately chosen for its hidden passages and observation capabilities. that Jeremiah's business success was built on information gathered through covert surveillance of his guests and competitors, and most damning of all, that his marriages were strategic arrangements designed to provide cover for activities that required the appearance of domestic respectability. The evening's discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Henley, summoned by Jeremiah to provide medical testimony about Elena's condition. However, Don Carlos's presence changed the dynamic of what Jeremiah had intended as a commitment hearing. Instead of a simple evaluation of Elena's mental state, the meeting became an interrogation of the circumstances surrounding both wives' illness. Dr. Henley, Don Carlos inquired, in your medical opinion, what could cause two different women with no previous history of mental illness to develop nearly identical symptoms after residing in the same location? Dr. Henley's response revealed the limitations of 1830s medical knowledge, but also his growing suspicions about the case. While such coincidences are unusual, he admitted, they are not impossible. Environmental factors including stress, isolation, and exposure to certain substances could theoretically produce similar symptoms in different individuals. However, the specific focus on mirrors and the consistent reports of receiving information from reflections suggest either a shared delusion or what Dr. Don Carlos pressed, or the possibility that both women were exposed to similar environmental conditions that produced similar hallucinogenic effects, making them susceptible to suggestion and false memories while maintaining their ability to function normally in other areas. The implications of Dr. Henley's statement hung heavy in the library's stifling air. If Elena's condition was artificially induced, then Margaret's similar breakdown took on an entirely different meaning. Rather than tragic coincidences, the wife's mental illness became evidence of systematic manipulation designed to discredit women who had learned information that threatened Jeremiah's carefully constructed facade. As the evening wore on, behavior became increasingly erratic, but in ways that suggested desperation rather than madness. She repeatedly requested access to a mirror, claiming she needed to verify important details before making serious accusations. When her requests were denied, she became agitated and began describing the contents of locked rooms and hidden compartments throughout the house, information that Jeremiah insisted she could not possibly possess. The crisis reached its climax when Elena suddenly stood up and announced that the mirror woman had revealed the location of the evidence that will prove everything. She led the group to the master bedroom, where she directed them to a section of wall behind the massive wardrobe. Following her instructions, they discovered not only the hidden passage Maria had found earlier, but a concealed compartment containing documents and materials that would transform the investigation into a criminal prosecution. The documents hidden in the wall cavity told a story that was both more complex and more horrifying than Elena's mirror woman had suggested. As Don Carlos examined the papers by lamplight, the true scope of Jeremiah Hartwell's activities began to emerge from decades of careful concealment. The first revelation came from a leather-bound ledger containing detailed records of surveillance activities conducted from the hidden passages. Entry after entry documented private conversations, personal secrets, and business negotiations that had been observed and recorded without the knowledge of the participants. The entries, written in Jeremiah's distinctive handwriting, revealed how he had used this information to manipulate business deals, blackmail competitors, and gain advantages in financial negotiations. March 15, 1829. Senator Patterson discussed railroad route plans in drawing room with associates, confirmed northern passage through Millbrook Valley, adjusted investment portfolio accordingly. June 3, 1829. Judge Dunlap revealed his gambling debts to his wife in their bedroom conversation. Excellent leverage for upcoming court cases involving the ironworks. But the surveillance activities were only the beginning of what the hidden documents revealed. A second collection of papers, wrapped in oilcloth and tucked beneath loose floorboards, contained correspondence with a Dr. Heinrich Zimmermann, a German physician who had been conducting what he called experimental treatments for female hysteria at private institutions throughout Pennsylvania. Dr. Zimmermann's letters, written in a mixture of English and German, described a systematic program designed to induce controlled mental instability in women who posed threats to their husbands' interests. The treatments involved carefully measured doses of various substances including mercury compounds, laudanum derivatives, and plant extracts that produced hallucinations and disorientation while leaving patients physically functional. The beauty of the treatment, Dr. Zimmermann wrote in one letter, is that the subject retains enough rationality to appear normal in casual interactions, while developing specific obsessions and delusions that discredit any inconvenient truths they might reveal. The focus on mirrors is particularly effective as it appears to be a natural feminine vanity taken to pathological extremes. Elena's accusations about being drugged were not paranoid delusions. They were accurate descriptions of a systematic poisoning program designed to drive her insane while maintaining the appearance of natural mental illness. The headache medicine Jeremiah provided contained carefully measured doses of substances that produced visual hallucinations, particularly when combined with the stress of isolation and the psychological pressure of living under constant surveillance. Margaret Hartwell had not suffered a tragic mental breakdown. She had been deliberately poisoned when she discovered evidence of Jeremiah's surveillance activities. Her increasingly erratic behavior was the result of drugs that made her see disturbing images in mirrors, while her attempts to communicate what she had learned were dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman. The most chilling discovery came from a final set of documents that revealed the true scope of Jeremiah's plans. He had not simply been conducting surveillance and blackmail from his mansion. He had been operating what amounted to a private intelligence network, using his social position and business connections to gather information for clients throughout Pennsylvania's political and business elite. The mansion's hidden passages weren't just spy holes, they were part of an elaborate system that included concealed recording devices, document copying facilities, and storage areas for compromising materials. Jeremiah's marriages weren't romantic relationships, they were business arrangements, designed to provide him with hostesses who could gather information at social events while remaining above suspicion due to their apparent respectability. When Margaret discovered evidence of these activities, Jeremiah had used Dr. Zimmerman's experimental treatments to discredit her potential revelations. When Elena began asking similar questions, he had simply repeated the same process, confident that the medical establishment's ignorance about the true causes of her symptoms would protect him from serious investigation. Don Carlos's reaction to these revelations was swift and decisive. As a successful businessman with political connections throughout Western Pennsylvania, he understood immediately that the documents represented evidence of criminal conspiracy on a massive scale. More importantly, he recognized that his daughter's life was in immediate danger as long as she remained in Jeremiah's control. Elena will be leaving this house tonight, he informed Jeremiah, and she will be taking these documents with her as evidence for the authorities. Dr. Henley, I assume, you will be revising your medical opinion regarding my daughter's condition in light of this evidence. Dr. Henley's response revealed the ethical crisis facing medical professionals confronted with evidence that their patients had been systematically poisoned by people they trusted. If these documents are authentic, he said slowly, then both Mrs. Margaret Hartwell and Mrs. Elena Hartwell were victims of deliberate poisoning designed to simulate mental illness. Mrs. Elena's condition should improve rapidly once the toxic substances are eliminated from her system. Jeremiah's reaction to the discovery was surprisingly calm, suggesting a man who had prepared for the possibility of exposure. The documents you found are forgeries, he claimed, planted by Elena during her delusional episodes. The correspondence with this alleged Dr. Zimmerman is fictional, designed to support her paranoid fantasies about being poisoned. I'm afraid her mental condition has progressed to the point where she's capable of creating elaborate false evidence to support her delusions. But Don Carlos had anticipated this defense. Then you won't object to having the contents of these medicine bottles analyzed by independent chemists, he replied, producing the various compounds Jeremiah had been administering to Elena. And you certainly won't mind if we bring in handwriting experts to verify whether these documents were written by you or by someone else. The confrontation might have continued indefinitely, but it was interrupted by an unexpected voice from the bedroom doorway. Sarah Quinn, the head housekeeper who had served the Hartwell family for over a decade, stepped into the room with an expression of grim determination. I can't stay silent any longer, she announced. I've watched 2 good women destroyed by what happens in this house, and I won't watch it happen to others. Mr. Rodriguez, your daughter is telling the truth about everything. I've seen the master administer the medicines. I've seen him using the passages to spy on guests, and I've seen what those treatments do to the ladies who live in this bedroom. Sarah's testimony provided the final piece of evidence needed to corroborate Elena's claims. As the head housekeeper, she had access to all areas of the mansion and had observed Jeremiah's activities over many years. More importantly, she had witnessed Margaret's deterioration and recognized the identical pattern beginning to emerge in Elena's behavior. I prepared the medicines Mr. Hartwell gave to both wives, Sarah confessed, her voice trembling with years of suppressed guilt. He told me they were treatments prescribed by Dr. Henley, but I noticed they came from unmarked bottles that arrived through private correspondence. When I asked about them, Mr. Hartwell said they were experimental remedies from European physicians that weren't available through local apothecaries. Sarah's detailed account revealed the methodical nature of Jeremiah's deception. She described how he had gradually increased the dosages of the mysterious compounds, timing the administration to coincide with periods when the wives spent extended time in the master bedroom. She had observed both women's growing fixation with mirrors, their increasing isolation from friends and family, and their progressive inability to distinguish between reality and hallucination. The most terrible part, Sarah continued, was watching them try to tell people what they were experiencing, only to have everyone dismiss their words as madness. Mrs. Margaret kept insisting that someone was watching her through the walls, that her food tasted strange, that the mirrors showed her things that couldn't be real. Everyone said it was nervous hysteria, but I knew something was wrong when Mrs. Elena began describing exactly the same experiences. Dr. Henley's professional reputation hung in the balance as the full scope of his unwitting participation in Jeremiah's scheme became clear. The medicines he had prescribed for both women's headaches and nervous conditions had been replaced with Jeremiah's poisonous compounds administered under the guise of legitimate medical treatment. His diagnosis of mental illness had provided the perfect cover for systematic poisoning, allowing Jeremiah to destroy his wife's credibility while maintaining his own reputation. As a caring husband dealing with family tragedy, I need to examine Mrs. Elena immediately, Dr. Henley announced, his professional composure cracking under the weight of his realization. If she has been subjected to chronic poisoning with hallucinogenic compounds, there may be physical evidence that could support these allegations. More importantly, we need to begin treatments to counteract any substances still in her system. But even as the evidence mounted against him, Jeremiah Hartwell demonstrated the calculating intelligence that had made him successful in business and espionage. Rather than continuing to deny the accusations, he shifted to what appeared to be a confession designed to minimize his legal exposure. "You're correct that I have been conducting surveillance activities from this house," he admitted with calm deliberation. "The hidden passages were installed by the previous owner, a man with similar business interests, who found them useful for gathering information about potential investors and competitors. When I purchased the property, I continued using these facilities because they provided significant advantages in commercial negotiations." Jeremiah's partial confession was carefully crafted to acknowledge the surveillance while denying the more serious charges of poisoning and conspiracy. He claimed that his wives had discovered the passages independently and had suffered mental breakdowns due to the stress of learning about his business activities. The medicines, he insisted, were legitimate treatments that had unfortunately proven ineffective against their deteriorating conditions. "Margaret became obsessed with the idea that I was using the passages to spy on her personally," Jeremiah explained, "when in reality I was simply conducting necessary business intelligence gathering. Her mental condition deteriorated rapidly. Once she became convinced that every aspect of our marriage was part of some elaborate deception. Elena has unfortunately followed a similar pattern, constructing elaborate conspiracy theories to explain perfectly legitimate business activities. This explanation might have been persuasive under normal circumstances, but the presence of Dr. Zimmerman's correspondence made it impossible to sustain. The German physician's letters were too specific, too detailed, and too obviously connected to the symptoms both women had experienced to be dismissed as coincidence. Don Carlos had no intention of allowing Jeremiah to escape through legal technicalities. "We'll let the courts determine whether your activities constitute legitimate business or criminal conspiracy," he declared. "In the meantime, Elena will be removed from this house immediately and placed under the care of physicians who haven't been compromised by your deceptions." The confrontation was reaching its conclusion when Elena herself, who had been sitting quietly during much of the discussion, suddenly spoke with a clarity and rationality that had been absent from her voice for months. "The mirror woman isn't gone," she said, her tone perfectly calm and lucid. "She's still here, still trying to warn people about what happens in this house, but I can see her clearly now without the medicines clouding my vision. She's not a reflection or a spirit or a delusion. She's me, the part of me that stayed rational and observant while the rest of my mind was being systematically destroyed." Elena's revelation represented a breakthrough that transformed the entire understanding of her condition. The mirror woman had been her own subconscious mind fighting against the effects of the hallucinogenic drugs by creating an alternate personality that could observe and remember events accurately. The conversations with her reflection had been internal dialogues between the drugged, confused Elena and the rational Elena who was trying to piece together the truth about her situation. "I remember everything now," Elena continued. "Every conversation I overheard through the passages. Every document I saw when Jeremiah thought I was too disoriented to understand. Every detail about his business arrangements and his correspondence with Dr. Zimmerman. The mirror woman wasn't giving me information. She was helping me remember information I had gathered myself but couldn't access consciously because of the drugs." The immediate aftermath of Elena's recovery and the discovery of Jeremiah's conspiracy sent shockwaves through Millbrook and the broader Pennsylvania business community. Don Carlos wasted no time in presenting the evidence to county authorities, while Dr. Henley began the process of documenting Elena's recovery as proof that her condition had been artificially induced. Within days of discontinuing Jeremiah's medicines, Elena's symptoms began to disappear rapidly. Her obsession with mirrors faded as her natural mental clarity returned, and her ability to distinguish between drug-induced hallucinations and reality was fully restored. Most significantly, her detailed memory of the information she had gathered during her months of impaired consciousness provided investigators with a comprehensive picture of Jeremiah's criminal network. The legal proceedings that followed revealed the true scope of what prosecutors termed the Hartwell conspiracy. Evidence gathered from the mansion's hidden compartments documented years of surveillance, blackmail, and information trafficking that had corrupted business and political dealings throughout western Pennsylvania. Jeremiah's clients had included corrupt judges, dishonest politicians, and unscrupulous businessmen who had paid substantial sums for compromising information about their rivals and opponents. Margaret Hartwell's tragic fate took on new meaning. as investigators exhumed her body and conducted post-mortem examinations using the most advanced forensic techniques available in 1835. Traces of mercury and other toxic compounds found in her remains confirmed that she had died not from mental illness, but from the cumulative effects of systematic poisoning. Her death was reclassified from natural causes to homicide, making Jeremiah liable for murder charges in addition to conspiracy and fraud. The Pennsylvania Hospital for the Insane, where Margaret had spent her final years, cooperated with the investigation by providing detailed records of her condition and treatment. These documents revealed that Margaret had maintained periods of lucidity throughout her confinement, during which she had consistently claimed that her husband was poisoning women to hide his criminal activities. Her statements, previously dismissed as the ravings of a madwoman, were now recognized as accurate testimony from a victim of deliberate chemical torture. Sarah Quinn's decision to testify against her employer proved crucial to the prosecution's case. Her detailed knowledge of the household's daily operations, combined with her observations of both wives' deterioration, provided investigators with a timeline that correlated perfectly with the administration of Dr. Zimmerman's experimental compounds. Her testimony also revealed the existence of other potential victims, house guests and business associates who had reported strange symptoms after visiting the Hartwell mansion. Dr. Zimmerman himself was located in Philadelphia, where he had been conducting similar experiments on patients at a private asylum. His arrest led to the discovery of a broader network of physicians and businessmen who had been using medical treatments as weapons against inconvenient women throughout Pennsylvania and neighboring states. The scandal, dubbed the poisoning conspiracy by newspapers, eventually implicated dozens of prominent men who had used similar tactics to silence wives, daughters, and female business associates who threatened their interests. Jeremiah's trial became one of the most sensational criminal proceedings in Pennsylvania history. The prosecution's case was strengthened by Elena's lucid testimony about her experiences, Sarah Quinn's detailed account of the household's operations, and the extensive documentary evidence found in the mansion's hidden compartments. Most damaging of all was Dr. Zimmerman's decision to cooperate with authorities in exchange for reduced charges, providing expert testimony about the effects of the compounds used to poison both wives. The defense attempted to portray Jeremiah as a victim of circumstances beyond his control, claiming that he had been manipulated by Dr. Zimmerman and other conspirators who had convinced him that his wives were genuinely mentally ill. This strategy failed when prosecutors presented evidence showing that Jeremiah had initiated contact with Dr. Zimmerman and had specifically requested treatments that would produce symptoms of insanity while leaving victims physically functional. The jury's verdict was unanimous: guilty on all charges, including murder in the first degree for Margaret's death, attempted murder for Elena's poisoning, and multiple counts of conspiracy, fraud, and extortion related to his surveillance and blackmail activities. The judge's sentence reflected the severity of the crimes and their impact on the community. Death by hanging, to be carried out within 30 days of conviction. Elena's recovery was complete by the time of Jeremiah's execution in December 1835. She had returned to her father's household in Pittsburgh, where she gradually resumed normal social activities and eventually remarried a merchant who specialized in importing goods from Spain. She lived a long and healthy life, but she never spoke publicly about her experiences in the Hartwell mansion beyond her testimony at the trial. The Hartwell mansion itself became a symbol of the darker aspects of America's industrial development and the vulnerability of women in a society that readily dismissed their concerns as hysteria or madness. The building was sold to satisfy Jeremiah's debts and was eventually converted into a boarding house for railroad workers. The hidden passages were sealed, the mirrors were removed, and the master bedroom was divided into smaller rooms to eliminate its associations with the tragic events. But the legacy of the Hartwell conspiracy extended far beyond the fate of one criminal and his victims. The case led to significant reforms in Pennsylvania's laws regarding the commitment of mentally ill patients, requiring independent medical evaluations and stricter oversight of private asylums. It also sparked a broader conversation about the use of medical treatments as tools of oppression and the need for better protection of women's legal rights. Dr. Henley, devastated by his unwitting participation in the poisoning scheme, devoted the remainder of his career to studying the effects of toxic compounds on mental health. His research, partly funded by compensation payments from Jeremiah's estate, contributed to the development of more sophisticated techniques for detecting poisoning and treating its effects. He also became an advocate for women's medical rights, arguing that female patients deserve the same quality of care and respect accorded to male patients. The discovery of Margaret and Elena's true fate raised disturbing questions about how many other women throughout America might have suffered similar treatment at the hands of husbands, fathers, or guardians who found it convenient to have them declared insane. Historical records from the period suggest that the Hartwell case was not an isolated incident, but rather one example of a broader pattern of medical abuse that may have claimed hundreds or thousands of victims whose stories were never investigated. The case also highlighted the importance of believing women who reported unusual or disturbing experiences. even when their accounts seemed improbable or contradicted conventional wisdom. Margaret and Elena's insistence that they were being watched, drugged, and manipulated had been dismissed as symptoms of mental illness, when in fact they were accurate descriptions of the crimes being committed against them. Today, the site of the original Hartwell mansion is occupied by a small park in what is now the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. A historical marker installed in 1985, exactly 150 years after Jeremiah's execution, commemorates the victims of the poisoning conspiracy and serves as a reminder of the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals from those who would exploit their trust and authority. The marker's inscription reads simply, "In memory of Margaret Dunlap Hartwell, Elena Rodriguez Hartwell, and all victims of medical abuse." Their courage in seeking truth despite overwhelming obstacles helped establish important legal protections that continue to safeguard patients' rights today. This mystery shows us how easily the vulnerable can be victimized by those in positions of trust and authority, and how crucial it is to listen carefully when someone reports that their reality doesn't match what others expect them to experience. What do you think of this story? Do you believe everything was revealed, or might there have been other victims whose stories were never uncovered? Leave your comment below. If you enjoyed this tale and want more horror stories like this, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share with someone who loves mysteries. See you in the next video.